We need trust, right? We need trust. When we're surrounded by people who believe what we believe and trust starts to emerge, when we trust them and they trust us, we're more willing to take risks. We're more willing to experiment, which requires failure. We're more willing to explore and go somewhere that no one has ever gone before with the confidence that if we fail, if we trip over, if we turn our backs, that those within our community, those who we trust and who trust us, will look after us while we're gone, will pick us up when we fall over, will help us when we're hurt. Our very survival depends on it.
In the mid to late 1970s, an economist by the name of Milton Friedman offered an entirely new definition of the purpose of business. He said the purpose of business is to maximize profit within the bounds of the law. That's a very low standard. Like, what about ethics, right? But this new definition of business, which was simply to maximize profit, believe it or not, that wasn't the definition of the responsibility of the business prior, right? It was more Adam Smith, which is to produce great product, and great product is how we, take care of the consumer, and that's what makes us thrive and all of that stuff. And it shifted the focus of business inwards. And a lot of executives embraced it. And you started to see that Miltonian embracement of really start to gain momentum in the 80s and was full-fledged in the 90s and 2000s. So it has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. We saw it fly, and we saw policy change to embrace that definition.
A bunch of years ago, I was in Vegas for a business trip, and they were very nice to put me up down the street at the Four Seasons. It's a beautiful hotel. The Four Seasons over here happens to have a coffee bar in the lobby. And so one afternoon, I went and bought myself a cup of coffee. And the barista working that day, named Noah, he was charming and funny and engaging, and I stood there for far too long talking to Noah. And as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? Without skipping a beat, Noah said, I love my job. Now, in my line of work, that's significant. Like is rational, right? I like the people, I like the work, I get paid well, I like my job. Love is emotional, it's a higher order connection. Immediately I followed up and said, can you tell me specifically what the Four Seasons is doing that you would even say to me, I love my job? And again, he didn't skip a beat. He said, yeah, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, ask me if there's anything that I need to do my job better. Not just my manager, any manager. And then he said, I also work at another hotel. He says, and there the managers catch us when we're doing things wrong. He says, there the managers put pressure on us simply to make our numbers and perform. There I like to keep my head below the radar and just get through the day and collect my paycheck. Only at the Four Seasons, he said, do I feel, there's that word again, do I feel I can be myself? What I find so profound about that story is this is the exact same human being in two different companies, in two different leadership environments, and our experience of him will be profoundly different, not because of the person, but because of the place he works.
We go to work every day and we sit at our computers and we sit at our desks and we solve problems by sending emails. Get up and go talk to somebody. It's called human interaction, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. If we're willing to give to the person next to us, it's amazing what they'll be willing to give to us, right? And again, our very survival depends on this. We need to trust each other, and we're more willing to trust somebody who's willing to help us.
COVID is a great example. Like when we went into COVID, that was chaos. Every plan went haywire, everything went haywire, and you do need leadership that does actually go into command and control. But the thing is that command and control only works when you have spent time building the trust up until that moment. Because when I tell you to follow my orders blindly, don't question me, just do it, there has to be the undying belief that you're making this decision for the right reason and you're not going to needlessly sacrifice me, and I know that you will make mistakes. So the Marines know that mistakes will get made and people will die because of those mistakes, but we're not doing them on purpose and we're not needlessly sacrificing people, and they will follow those orders blindly. Now that's an extreme example because it's the Marine Corps and it's life and death, but the same is true in business, which is you can't command and control all the time. That's micromanagement and that wears people out. But good leaders who are empathetic and spend the time building trust and care about their people in chaos in crisis, they have the opportunity to convert into short-term command and control, and it's highly, highly effective, and the team comes together in remarkable, remarkable ways. But the trust has to be built first. If you do not have trusting teams, what you do have is a group of people who show up to work every single day lying, hiding, and faking. Remember, a trusting team is when people feel safe. It's a trusting team is when people feel they can be vulnerable amongst their own. They can raise their hand and say, I made a mistake. Or, you've promoted me to a position where I don't really know what to do. I think I need more training. Or I'm having troubles at home and it's affecting my work. Or I'm scared. Or I need help. Without any fear of humiliation, without any fear of retribution. In fact, they say these things with confidence that their leader, their boss, their colleagues would rush to them to support them. If you do not have trusting teams, what you have is a group of people who show up to work every day who will hide mistakes for fear of getting in trouble. They will not admit that you've promoted them to a position and they actually have no clue what they're doing. They're going to just keep faking it. They would never tell you that they're suffering undue stress because of something that's happening at home and that it's affecting their work. They're not going to tell you that they're scared, and they're definitely not going to ask for help for fear that they'll find themselves on some short list for the next round of redundancies. And eventually, cracks will show up, and eventually the organization will break. Not because of the people, but because of the leaders leading those people. There was no such thing as using mass layoffs on a regular basis to manage the numbers. There was no such thing as mass layoffs to balance the books prior to the early 1980s. It did not exist. It was used as a last resort when the company was really losing money, right? Did not exist. That's number one. Number two, the whole idea of rank and yank that Jack Welch popularized, where you rank the entire company based solely on performance, you promote the top 10% and fire the bottom 10% every single year, with no assessment as to are they stabbing each other in the, are those high performers bad for the culture, stabbing each other in the back for their individual performance? And are the low performers struggling with other kinds of issues? Maybe they're under stress, maybe it's market conditions, who knows? Didn't matter. You get ranked, you get fired, you get promoted. Guess what that did to the culture? Everybody was stabbing each other.
We had this twisted thoughts about how we get the most out of our people. Like, how am I going to get the most out of our mate? People are not a towel that you wring them out, how much you can get out of them. The question is, what kind of environment can I create in which my people can work at their natural best?
Every single one of us, our self-confidence was determined by how we were raised, the parents we had, the teachers we had, the bosses we've had, the jobs we've had. My sister worked for a company for 17 years, and her boss destroyed her self-confidence. She came out of that job, and she didn't realize until she got into her new job how afraid she was to make decisions because of her boss. And it took a while for her to get her confidence back. And so if somebody's insecure, we have to over and over and over again prove to them, because we don't know where they came from. We don't know what kind of trouble they got in before, for being honest, right? Or how they were raised. We don't know. And so we have to have total empathy and just prove to them that if they make a mistake, they're going to get helped, not hurt. They're going to get supported, not yelled at. The imbalance of shareholder supremacy. Taking care of our shareholders was always a thing. It's not an issue, but it wasn't considered more important than the customer or the employee. We now live in a world where the shareholder is now considered more important than the customer and the employee, and you hear bankers and CEOs they're talking nonsense when they talk about their fiduciary duty, right? It's completely made up. And that all was popularized by Jack Welch. He was the poster child for all of these new ways of running business that are now completely standardized.
At the end of the day, the human animal is a social animal. And our very survival depends on our ability to form communities, to form cultures. When we're surrounded by people who believe what we believe, something remarkable happens. Trust emerges. And make no mistake of it, trust is a feeling, a distinctly human feeling.